Welcome back, guys. This is Maverick here, and we are continuing our watch with the penultimate episode of Steins Gate 0. So, last episode was quite fun, right? The Okabe of old was back, and he picked off right where he left off before he went to the future as well, right back to smack dabbing, hitting his head on the big wall of convergence. With that being said, though, we all know how this is going to end, right? It's obviously going to be going back to the original Steinsgate series, so we know that Okabe has to trick the world in a way, right? As if, whatever. But in any case, what I'm trying to say is we know how it ends here. Now, what I'm interested in is how exactly, what kind of steps or what kind of inspiration he takes in order to get there. Right, so even though we know the end, it's the sort of journey, right? Especially since we have 2 episodes left. So yeah, in this episode, he's probably going to figure out how exactly to do it. I expect him to try a lot of different things and maybe get closer and closer and closer. And maybe with one last final push, he finally knows what to do, and then we can go back to the episode that we know. I am kind of curious whether or not they are going to show the original episode 23 in the episode 23 of Steins Gate 0, right? Like, is it going to, like, how are they actually going to make it go back onto the main timeline, storyline again? In any case, let's get into the episode right now and see how he does it. Alright, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. I quite like this piano background music. It's been used quite a lot in Steins Gate 0. I guess you could even say it's a main theme here. Wait, why does... Oh, is this after Daru punched him? The future Okabe is dead. Right. So this is before, I guess he time leaped back to the past again. Before no, before last episode where he had this entire revert to himself. I think we've seen her say this before. Hey! It's Hyo in Kyoma. Right, so this Maho hasn't actually wasn't actually explained this character yet. Yeah, they're Why is Stratfor and DARPA fighting each other? That's also something I would like to know, but they're probably never going to say that in this anime. He's way more self-conscious than he is in the original. Joma! Mamoru-san. You're a genius. I'm talking about the voice actor. Tricked them all. Why would the Russians be using an Apache? Because I believe in the last episode, the helicopter was still an Apache attack helicopter, wasn't it? The viewers. Why is Darius left as well? Yeah. はい。2010 February. Hey. イェーイ the email. Finally. ？What? Seriously? Really? 2010, 2011? Yeah, that sounds about right. They're talking about the messaging app line. So basically, Amadeus Kirisu needs to. Hmm. But that actually. Huh. Well, that does solve one of the problems here. Right. I remember, like, quite a few episodes ago, I was hypothesizing that Amadeus Kirisu really is a different entity from Kirisu. Oh, yeah, he needs to reinstall the app. Yeah. Yeah. This is the, I guess, true sacrifice. The steinsgate 0. And Maho as well. I mean, it's less of a sacrifice in that case, but still, they'll never meet. Yeah. Sounds like the Matrix. Yeah, definitely getting some Matrix vibes here. It's not that easy. you will. Okay. That's probably even more painful, to be honest. Hmm. Wait, is this the same place where he said goodbye with Carissa? Yeah, it is. Damn. Meet again? Ugh. Damn. I know I didn't really say much for this episode, but yeah, compared with all the others, this is the one where, it's actually permanent. Oh, there we go. Alrighty, so there we go. Wasn't really expecting this episode to go this way, but yet in another way, I guess I can't say I'm surprised at this, this conclusion to Amadeus Kirisu. And, I gotta be honest here. I feel like out of all the character deaths in Steins Gate, both in Steins Gate Zero and in the original Steins Gate, I probably feel this one the most, right? And some of you guys have had dialogue with me before in the comments as well and whatnot. I am. It's just the way I'm wired, right? It's more of a I'm not that much into the emotions of that point, and whereas in the back of my mind I'm always thinking something like, oh, but I know that they'll come back in the future and whatnot, and it's the meta knowledge, right? But unfortunately that's not really something that I can turn off here. So even with all the the original emotional scenes, whatnot, in the original Steins Gate. In the back of my mind, I was always like, this is a time travel anime, they can go back and fix it, right? Of course, it's unknown how exactly they will do it, but, the meta knowledge or the meta understanding is still there, so it sort of lessened the impact in a lot of ways for me. For Amadeus Kirisu here, though, however, that truly is a permanent death, right? Especially since we know what canon is, what is actually supposed to happen, and Amadeus Kirisu is not part of that canon. I think I mentioned this before in the earlier episodes as well. The characters that I do mostly sympathize with are those that aren't going to be able to get the the happy ending, if you will, of the true ending here. So that includes Maho. Maho, if we're going back to the original Steins Gate timeline, she doesn't really meet any of these other characters, right? She basically, she still has this senpai kohai relation with Kurisu, but that's pretty much it. Even in the, well, I guess the movie isn't. I think people say that the movie isn't technically canon, but still. Even in the movie, they never really met her and whatnot. And of course, they can meet in the future and so on and so forth. But that's why her entire character is, I guess, less of a sad story. It's not like they were that close in over the course of Steins Gate Zero. They could easily hit it up and continue to develop the relationship in the future, back from zero. So that one is, I guess, a little bit more okay in a sense. Suzuha was the other one who I really felt sympathetic with, because if she actually achieves her goal of changing the timeline to one which avoids World War III, and in this case would be the Steins Gate timeline, well, she's not going to be able to become this sort of peer, this sort of companion to all the other lab members, right? And don't forget, all the others would not have their memories. Well, I guess there is some residual memory with the way that the series has been going so far, the entire franchise, but still, it's especially in the case of Suzuha, she's going to always be viewing these other lab members as basically the not even elder brothers, even more older than that, right? By the time Suzuha is born and actually meets, is actually at this current age, Okabe and the rest are already like what, 40, something like that, right? It's not even someone who you can call big. Of course, she still calls him big bro and big sis, but I mean, in a sense, there's a gap there, right? So she can never actually, have this sort of really, as this sort of relationship as a peer with the rest of the crew, rest of the gang. So it is kind of sad on her part. Although, of course, how should I say it? In return for this sacrifice of these character relationships, she would have her parents both alive and well and being able to care for her, right? So that is, I guess, a good trade-off in the end there. And then here we have the Amadeus Kirisu, who is basically permanently killed based on this. Now, granted, with the way the dialogue is going, it's entirely possible that we see maybe sometime in the future Maho is developing Amadeus or something, because don't forget she's based on Kurisu. So once we reach the Steinsgate timeline and Kurisu comes back, well, they can take all the memory they want from her and use it to build another Amadeus, right? But at the same time, I feel like I don't know, it's just different for me compared to all the other characters who, okay, so they might have their memory shifted or whatnot and not be in the exact same circumstance as they were before. Like, for instance, in the original Steinsgate timeline, we went through different various timelines where all the various girls had their future with Okabe and whatnot. But still, I feel like, at the end of the day, going back to the true timeline, they're still all there, and they all have their prior relationship with Okabe and whatnot. So it's more, how should I say it? There's less being changed here. Whereas in this case of the Amadeus Kurisu, she basically only lived for like an year, and I don't know. There's just something about the way that the Amadeus was built. She's a program and all that, and she's reset, she's basically back to square one, right? Everything needs to be reevaluated, and her personality and whatnot, it really changed throughout the course of her meeting Okabe, and especially in these kinds of circumstances, right? But that's all going to change in the future. Is that going to? Yeah, so basically, I don't know, in the back of my mind, I still feel like even if Amadeus is rebuilt, it's sort of kind of not exactly the same, right? Compared to with the others, their memories just being changed a little bit, because at the core, they're still the same. I mean, I guess Amadeus at the core is still the same as well, but I don't know, it just feels different for me. I don't know if you guys can get what I mean here, but it just feels different for me. And speaking of Amadeus Kurisu, right? I did like how in this episode we see them talking, her and Okabe talking at the exact same point, exact same place where Okabe and Kurisu were actually talking. I believe a few episodes back, in the one where Okabe accidentally went into another timeline where Kurisu was living, with the station scene and all that. And I guess it's a nice sort of callback, and all Kurisu's think alike, I guess you could say. And speaking of, I mean, I like that scene, but that's pretty much all I want to say about that. And the other thing that actually came to my mind after watching that was, in that particular scene with Kurisu and Okabe, I still remember that during that episode, Kurisu said that she had planted a GPS tracker on Okabe. Like, are we just going to completely ignore that? I thought that was actually a hidden plot point or something, but apparently not, right? Because it hasn't shown up anywhere here, and we're literally at the end of the series next episode. So I guess that wasn't that important after all. So I guess it's sort of a red herring, if you will. So yeah, this episode was more of a emotional episode, I guess you could say, mostly saying goodbyes, dialogue and whatnot. So for most of the time I was pretty much quiet, since I wanted to feel their emotions and what they were actually trying to say there, right? And of course we had this pretty cute German line here: "God does not play dice," the famous quote by Einstein in regards to quantum mechanics, quantum theory, which is also kind of ironic in a way, since time travel, quantum mechanics is one of the only, it's one of the few theories, let's just say, that allows for time travel in specific conditions and whatnot. I'm not going to go over the entire physics part again. I did much of that in the original Steinsgate already. So I guess that's also a nice little reference there, although honestly I was expecting her to use a phrase from either Mozart or Amadeus as the phrase, the key phrase, or the passphrase for triggering those commands. But yeah, the actual thing I wanted to mention from this episode that I do kind of have a complaint with would be the Deus Ex Machina of the D line, right? And let's be honest here, that is pretty much what it is, right? This is something that came completely out of the blue and conveniently ready tested and ready and fully developed for Okabe to use during this circumstance, during this episode, right? Like, let's remember what was Daru actually doing around this time, right? He was busy helping Suzuha doing some research into a time machine and whatnot, and then later on he was busy building the D-mail with Maho, right? So when did he have time to not only complete the D-mail, I mean, not the D-mail, not building a D-mail, building the time leap machine, right? And then, so not only did he have time to complete the D-mail, he also had spare time to complete this D-line, and how exactly did they test it, right? And for some reason, it just happens to work just like that. And, succeeded in changing timelines as well. I mean, look, I get it. They're short on time. They need some kind of mechanism to carry the story forward, but it did really come out of nowhere, and I know it's just way too convenient in a sense. And since most of you guys who are watching this right now, I assume, are really hardcore Steins Gate fans, I guess you would probably know what D-line is referring to, but just in case you don't, it's basically a play on the Line. Line is an instant messaging platform, mostly developed, I guess you could say, jointly developed by Japan and Korean. It's kind of complicated there in regards to, what the shareholders and whatnot and the company equity, but it's mostly used in Japan and a select few countries around Asia and Asia Pacific, such as Taiwan and etc., right? It's basically WhatsApp, except it's it's more of a super app kind of thing. So I guess the best equivalent in the world would be WeChat, that's used by China, and of that sort. But and that, to the best of my, I'm not going to look this up because it's not that important, but to the best of my memory, that was around the time, 2010, 2011 was around the time when Line came onto the scene. I still remember, actually, that because I was still in school back then. I was in college back then, and that was a time where everybody was switching from WhatsApp to Line, at least in my country, because Line just had these stickers and whatnot, and it was especially popular with the girls. So that is why Line became dominant, even though most people were originally using WhatsApp. I think that was also the time when WhatsApp tried to charge. I don't know if any of you guys remember that time period. So that's how Line got to be so big. And of course, in Japan, it is the dominant instant messaging platform, and they offer a ton of other services as well. They got banking, they got payments, they got insurance, traveling, shopping, and whatnot. It's it's a big conglomerate. But that's beside the point. I'm just saying, mostly the point I want to make here is that it was completely out of the blue, and it's just, I don't know, I don't really want to call it lazy writing, but it's, the usage of a Deus Ex Machina is mostly associated with lazy writing. So, meh. But anyways, that's been way long of a review. I don't even remember what I was saying so far. So next episode is the finale. I was thinking whether or not I was going to do a continuous episode and just directly watch the next one as well, but I decided not to for two reasons. One, I actually think I have a cold coming on. The temperature change has been pretty big lately, so I'm going to turn in early today to get some good rest. And also because normally at the end of a series, I would go back and do my recap on, or my final thoughts on the entire series as a whole. So I want to make sure that I'm well rested and have clear mind in order to really, talk about Steins Gate 0 at length, right? And how I feel about the entire season, well, I guess you can say the entire sequel to Steins Gate, I mean. So, yeah, there we go. That was my review of Steins Gate episode 22. See you guys next time in the finale. Bye-bye.